welcome to another episode of Both Sides Now with your hosts Alex Martin and Eve McCullum. We're breaking down politics with the goal to break down political polarisation and get you engaged in the issues that matter. Today, this week, we've got another bunch of just lots of things to talk about. It's been a busy sort of fortnight in politics. We're going to get into a bit of a breakdown with our discussion with Opportunity Leader, Kule Wong, speak a little bit to the definitions of a woman and man bill, talk about Scrutiny Week, and Labour's first policy of 2026. So lots to talk about, other fun stuff along the way. But Eve, as always, another week, how are you going?
I'm probably, being completely honest, exhausted. I am in just finished week one of a 4-week trial at work, so I'm a lawyer, which doing civil trials are chaotic. I've also been at a CrossFit comp today, if I didn't need to add more things to my busy list of things going on in my life at the moment. So very busy, but also very grateful for all the opportunities and everything that's happening at the moment. Yeah, but so if you do also, over the next 4 weeks, if there's anything, if you don't see as much of me, that's why. It's because I am...
She's got stuff to do.
Yeah, busy in Christchurch, which I will also just give a shout out to. Fantastic city. We've been staying right in the city centre of Christchurch. Riverside Markets with all the options for lunch. Fantastic.
Like we went there a lot when we were down for Super Round for Super Rugby. It was just the perfect place to like people watch and get food and so many food options.
And it's not like a crappy mall food court either. Like it's actually all like good quality food.
Really fun.
And it's also right across the road from the courthouse, which is fantastic because it means it's like a 2-minute walk to get something for lunch. So it's not a crappy sandwich from a random cafe. So yeah, actually really enjoying Christchurch. You can see the positive, I guess, that's come out of the earthquake is they've been able to redevelop that city into something that, I think many other cities in New Zealand could only dream of having.
Yeah.
But yeah, how are you going?
I'm also well. I feel a little bit exhausted too, and I don't even have a 4-week trial going on. But I don't know, maybe it's just that time of year where seasons are changing, it's getting cooler. We're, bang on the shortest day of the year now. So leaving home in the dark and coming home in the dark can be a little bit dreary. So it's a little bit more down buzz and stuff. But I feel like the sports at the moment is really sort of bringing up the moods a lot. Have you got a FIFA World Cup sweepstake?
I've got 2. I've got one with work and then I've got another one with sort of flat and wider friends. I think my team for at work is Germany, and I say this because I'm so disengaged with football. And then I've got Ivory Coast and someone else in my team, my flat. So yeah, I'm participating because it's fun to do, but I will completely be honest, I'm not at all a football fan. And I think I could name maybe 2 professional football players globally, and of course Tim Payne.
Oh, of course Tim Payne, our local legend, 100%. I feel like I can really back Tim Payne, not only as somebody who I guess cares for their country going forward in the World Cup, but I've got 3 teams in our work sweepstakes, which the only stakes are glory. But I have Netherlands, Norway, and New Zealand. So I feel like I really lucked out with that one.
You got a really good pick.
Yeah, good pick, hey, the 3 N's. So it's been cool kind of having it on in the background over the past week or so. I actually thought I was unwell on Tuesday, so I was at home watching the New Zealand-Iran game, and I actually really enjoyed it. Which is crazy from me, I feel like, somebody who supports the oval ball sport rather than the circular ball sport.
I also think just from a political perspective here in politics and sport, it's fascinating that Iran are 1, allowed to participate in this World Cup, and 2, participating in it in America. Like, I can't believe in all the outrageous things that Trump's done. And I wouldn't even think it would be that outrageous because if you consider the situation with Russia for a long time, is they have to compete under a neutral flag and some things they're not even allowed to go to. So I do think it's fascinating that Iran are competing at the FIFA World Cup in America.
Well, have you seen the issues relating to that? So they finished their game, I think they were in Los Angeles, and as soon as the game finished, they had to get on a plane and go back to their accommodation in Mexico. And I mean, like, how difficult is that for the players as well? Like, you're not gonna be able to rest properly when you're on a plane.
No, not at all.
So yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I like, the thing with like sports and politics, right? It's always a very interesting arrangement to me. New Zealand has its own very unique relationship with sports and politics, and there'll be lots of people who say that they shouldn't mix. I think inherently it does mix, but especially interesting with the FIFA World Cup being held over 3 different countries, and sort of seeing different approaches to everything. One positive thing I do want to speak to, and sometimes it can get a little bit lost in the sports and politics of it all, but there's lots of really fun stuff that comes out of this World Cups of whatever sport you play. And my favourite thing at the moment is the Scottish people in Boston. Have you seen this?
No, I have not seen this.
They have taken over Boston, the Scots. I assume that's where the Scotland team are based, perhaps. And they are drinking the town or the city dry. They're just hundreds of men in kilts walking down the road, singing and chanting and being so much fun. They're like replicating memes. There's this popular tourist attraction spot now based off a meme where this cop went down a slide and he like rockets down a slide and like spits out. It's called the Boston Cop Slide. And the Scots are all over it. You've got men in kilts flying down the slide as well. So
that's chaotic.
It's just one of those beautiful things where you see this little mix of culture, and I think all of the Bostonians are very receptive to it. They're like, let them stay. This is great vibes.
That's so niche.
It's so good. But very quickly, we'll get through the sport chat. We're recording this on Saturday night, Saturday the 20th. In a little over 2 hours, we've got the Super Rugby final. Eve, who are you backing?
I'm backing the Hurricanes. I know that's going to be a shock to you and your Chiefs-loving boyfriend. I just think it'll be fantastic to see the Hurricanes win. I will note that it's going to be really awkward for the Chiefs if they lose their 4th final in a row.
And I can't deal with my Chiefs-loving boyfriend if that happens for the 4th year in a row.
It's also, I just think, to be honest, it's fantastic that the Crusaders aren't in the final.
Yeah. I think we posted a clip about calling out the Crusaders and our respective teams in the final sort of series, and Barbara Edmonds replied to it in People Manner, and she was like, damn, that was brutal. I'm like, well, you're a Hurricanes fan too, Barb. You should get on the train.
I just think it's so incredibly boring, and this doesn't happen in any other sport around the world, really. So incredibly boring. The same team is predicted to win every year.
Yeah.
It's not good for the Super Rugby if the Crusaders win every year. And the other interesting thing to note is I don't think any Australian teams have ever in Super Rugby, like in the Super Rugby Pacific, have won a playoff game in New Zealand.
In New Zealand.
Yeah, in New Zealand. In New Zealand. And so I think, again, like, that's concerning, So it's great that we're first step of having not the Crusaders in the final, but I would like to see Australia do better next year.
Yeah, gutting that there weren't any Australian teams in the semi-finals.
Yeah, we got knocked out.
Yeah.
4 New Zealand teams.
Brumbies and Reds got out, so yeah, that's a shame. But yeah, so I'll pick the Chiefs, I guess. I have to. No, I do back the Chiefs. I think, I'd like to see them win. But honestly, with my boys, the Highlanders out in like round 15, like the last round for them was a bye. I kind of can't be bothered with it at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm much more excited about Super Rugby Opiki. So I think Matatu, which would be my team, the South Island team, are playing the Hurricanes today or tomorrow, I believe. So yeah, all behind our wahine now.
I was just talking to a friend today who works in rugby, and she was saying how, because Super Rugby Opiki is later this year than it normally is, and she was saying it's been deliberately done so that the women have a chance they can go and play overseas, so in Japan or in Europe, come back, play Super Rugby, and then go on to play Farah Palmer Cup or Blackbirds, which I thought was such a nice way to do it, because it's allowing the women to go and get more experience and also to go and earn some money, because female rugby players aren't paid that well in New Zealand. So I thought that was quite a cool way they've structured that. So
yeah, sick.
Hats off to New Zealand Rugby for doing that well.
Shout out. Wow. Rare shout out for New Zealand Rugby. Let's go.
All right, well, on to politics.
On to politics. The sports chat's done. Let's crack into our thoughts and feelings on our chat with Opportunity Leader Kule Wong. Eve, what's your take?
I thought she was great. I really liked how we just went to her house and we kind of just sort of, felt like you were chatting with a friend. I think she's very refreshingly normal. I think the Opportunity Party, and she just owns up to this in the interview, have in the past kind of been very bit nerdy but unrelatable, and I personally still really liked Raf Manji, the previous leader, but I think it's great to see now a leader that, she's a mum of 2 young kids, and she's had sort of a career both overseas and in New Zealand, so she kind of, I think, just most people probably could relate to her in some way. She's just launched her 2-tick campaign in Mount Albert as well. I also like that I think that she's a bit pragmatic and realistic about what Opportunity can achieve. was though intrigued by her comment when she said, "Oh, we can help all these parties work together." I was like, I'm not sure you're going to be able to help sort Winston Peters out and make him behave. Many people have failed and tried.
Good luck to the person who tries next.
Yeah, and I do think still think some opportunities policies are a little bit. I'm not sure how they work in practice, but I think what I like about opportunity as a whole, and I get frustrated with people that are kind of like, wasted vote, or they're just out to lunch. I really admire people that are trying to do things differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's at the core of what they're trying to do. They're trying to do politics differently and address some of our big issues differently, not sort of play the regular political game. So I think on that regard, I really enjoyed speaking with her, and I do think that opportunity really interesting. Whether or not I think they're going to get over the 5% threshold, I don't know. Poll out this week had them at 3.3.
Don't know, didn't see, but I have seen a lot of people sort of chatting, like the chat around whether opportunity meets the 5% threshold this year seems to be getting louder. Like more people seem to be saying that it's going to happen. It's going to happen this year. Now, obviously, we won't know until November 7th or perhaps November 8th, but yeah, I don't know, could happen this year. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I was very interested to see. But what did you think about QLA, I guess, generally, and what are your thoughts on opportunity?
I really liked Q. I thought she was really approachable, really pragmatic, and really sensible. And there were the way in which she conducted herself, and also then the way in which she conducts her party with her policies. I really see myself sort of in that party. I agree with a lot that she has to offer and that the party has to offer. But I actually don't think it's going to be enough for me to feel like I would switch my vote from Greens to opportunity. And I think part of that for me is a little bit of the wasted vote mentality. And I think because for me, I look at the government that we have now, I don't want to take any risks. I want this government to go. And I like even if it's a make-up with Christopher Luxon, opportunity, and then say either ACT or New Zealand First. I'd say probably more ACT rather than New Zealand First. I don't trust Christopher Luxon as a leader, so I don't want her to side with him. And I did appreciate. I really liked her comment when she said people come and ask me and say, well, what if you go with the other side? And I think she said, well, wouldn't you rather the parties be drawn back into the middle as opposed to going out to the extremes? Totally agree with that. But I think for me, the risk just probably isn't there. And as much as I think that she is, and the party policies are very pragmatic, whether they work in principle, I'm not sure how she's going to get a land value tax over the line with either any party that she that the party may align with in a coalition.
Yeah, I agree. I would really encourage our listeners to go and listen to that episode, because I think if you are someone who's feeling a bit disenfranchised with politics, she does give a bit of hope. I do think, though, just quickly on her finally, that point about not knowing who she's going to go with is a problem that people will have, because I think people ultimately, if you vote for most of the other minor parties, you kind of know where they're going to go broadly, and you know what government you're going to get.
Yeah.
And I think there will be some that don't like that risk. There'll be some blue-green voters, who come from National, would not want to see her go into government with Labour and Greens. Same people like you, Green voters who don't like the Greens at the moment, don't want to see her go into government with National. And
I do like the Greens at the moment. I'll just clarify that.
Well, there's some Green voters who may have, struggle with the Greens. So I think that will be another challenge they're going to have. But I guess watch the space, and we'll keep you up to date with all things opportunity as the election progresses.
How they're going. It'll be very interesting. Right, cracking on, I wanted this week to speak to the definition of a woman and man bill. Eve, you've seen this in the news a lot. I mean, how could you not? How could you not, right?
Yeah.
We also spoke to this with Q, and I thought she gave a really good response to this sort of matter. But let's first and foremost kind of get an idea of what this bill is and how it came to be. So this is a members' bill drawn out of the biscuit tin, and the bill was under the name of New Zealand First MP Jenny Marcroft. I don't really know who she is, but she's a New Zealand First MP. It's a really short bill. It only inserts two sections, 13A and 13B, meaning of a woman, meaning of a man, into our legislation interpretation and things. And the bill means that whenever you see woman or man in a bit of legislation, this is how woman or man is to be determined. Especially say if there are any court cases, if it goes to court, that's how the judges would be sort of instructed to define a woman or a man. The purpose behind this bill is supposedly to uphold legal certainty, protect the integrity of sex-based rights, and ensure that language and law reflects biological reality. Okay, so listen, there's a lot going on here. That's the brief overview. But I just want to put it out in the open that I put a BFW on this bill. A big effing warning. I don't like this bill. I think it is very redundant. I don't think it's necessary. I think that it is discriminatory. The Attorney General agrees with me. And it is really exclusionary of our queer community, of intersex peoples, transgender peoples, a huge array of people that live in New Zealand, and it could have really detrimental effects, not only for the queer community and the messaging that this bill sends to that particular community, but also for women. The bill purports to, uphold sex-based rights and be all about protecting women. I don't think it does that at all. I think it does the exact opposite.
I think that the response to this bill was really appropriately summed up by a billboard that St Matthews and the City have put out. For our listeners that haven't seen it, it says, "We don't care what's in your pants, and neither should the government." And I think that just beautifully sums up the situation. I just think it's no one else's business. Mm-hmm. It's not something that needs to be defined. I think that there is a lot of scaremongering that goes on both sides of this debate. I just don't think it's an issue.
It's not an issue, and it's definitely some of that more distracting policy. And as Q put it, it's the smaller stuff, the social issues that aren't issues, that stir up the most discussion. Yeah. It's the loudest, and it just doesn't need to be.
And I'm really disappointed that National have supported it through to Select Committee.
That's really funny you say that, Eve. I was going to bring that up.
I think that's incredibly disappointing. I suspect the reason is politics. But I just think at times you've got to stand up for what's right, and I just think, we're really going to lose any votes by voting against this? I don't think so, because this would have gone, maybe once people continue to make noises about it, maybe you wouldn't, but I don't think that you're going to, I don't think you're going to lose that many votes, if any, because you didn't support this bill,
No.
I am actually quite disappointed that they are supporting it. National in the past have had a bit of a rocky track record with some of the stuff. I will acknowledge it was under a national government, when National was in power, that gay marriage became legalised, but National voted against the bill banning sexual conversion therapy. Yeah, conversion therapy for gay conversion therapy. And I just, sometimes you've got to do what's right, and I'm disappointed as a National Party voter that they've chosen to support this issue.
I really appreciate that candor, Eve, because that was what I wanted to speak to you about.
Beat you to it.
Let me just look at my note. Disappointed in National for seeing this through to first reading. No, but you see, or I don't know if you saw any of the speeches in Parliament.
I haven't seen any of them. I didn't bought myself. I think they'd be awful. I didn't bought myself to watch those.
Well, I mean, this is the balance, right? We're saying this isn't an issue, but obviously we're drawn to seeing it, to talking about it, and I'll get to that in a second. But I just wanted to very quickly mention Nicola Grigg, who is the Minister for Women. She said essentially that despite her party supporting this bill, she is, quote, not convinced that this bill will advance the rights and opportunities or the well-being of women and girls in any way, shape or form in New Zealand. So why are you supporting it?
I know. And I would love to invite anyone who, I guess, is someone who's a supporter of this bill. I'd love to hear from you, because I'm curious to know, I've never bought into the argument that by allowing people who are transgender harms women's rights. I've never understood that.
No, neither.
I have never once walked into a woman's bathroom and seen someone who's a male dressed up as a woman. I've never seen that anywhere. And I've been various places, gym bathrooms, public bathrooms, restaurants.
Airplane, come on.
I just have never had that issue, and so I'm really, really curious to know, where that comes from. I do see how people things like pregnant women. I have no concerns with those terms being used, but I just genuinely just don't think it's something that's happening. But if any of our listeners, are supporters of this bill and has some sort of insight stuff that we don't have, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, one of the real big issues that I have about this bill is that it used the term biological, but it doesn't define it.
Yeah.
And like how one defines biological is really daft, because how do you sort of like qualify biological? Are you checking somebody's genitalia? Is it based on your reproductive organs? Are you checking chromosomes? Like how do you actually determine what biological means, or what a biological reality is? People come in so many different shapes and sizes. Like, it's just so ridiculous. And how it is enforced, I have no idea. And that's why I really love that billboard that you pointed out. But secondly, and I want you to sort of stay with me on this one. I'm going to go on a spiel and just stay with me. Now, one of my favorite podcasts is called No Such Thing as a Fish. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, haven't listened.
It's based sort of from the TV show QI. So the fact finders for that TV show QI come together every week and say their 4 favorite facts. It's a really good podcast. It's a real hit in my household. The name of the podcast, No Such Thing as a Fish, is based off this, what an American paleontologist and evolutionary biologist, and I think he won a Nobel Peace Prize, Stephen Jay Gould, once said. He said that there is no such thing as a fish because it is so biologically difficult to define what a fish is. For example, a fish has no biological meaning. About 20,000 species of vertebrates have scales, fins, and live in water, but they do not form a coherent cladistic group. Some, the lungfishes and the coelacanth in particular, are genealogically close to creatures that crawled out on land to become amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, like us.
Yeah.
And so I make this argument because, like, of course they're a fish. We can see with our eyes that they're a fish. And maybe there's an argument of why we need to define what a fish is. But we all understand it. I don't think defining what fish is, for example, across a whole array of legislation is going to do anything for the fish. So, you know, I just think it's so stupid and so unnecessary. And yeah,
I think that sums it up brilliantly. And I also think we've got to remember to have empathy. I guess my last point is have empathy for the people that this conversation's about.
Yeah.
And I remember someone said to me once, because I think I will be honest, I've struggled a bit with the transgender stuff myself. And someone said to me once, she was like, imagine being uncomfortable in something as core as your gender. You think about how much of our identity is linked to our gender sexuality, and you know, and not knowing who you are in that sense and how difficult that must be. And so I think, you know, I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but the trans people have very high suicide rates in New Zealand. You know, so I think we've got to remember disproportionately so. Yeah. So I think we've got to remember who this conversation's about, and just acknowledge that it's like I feel incredibly sorry for people in those positions, and I think we've got to, you know, acknowledge that they go through a really tough time, and I can't relate to it at all, you know, and I don't want to pretend that I can relate to it, but I just think we have to acknowledge that it's not an easy situation to be in.
When I was preparing to talk about this, that's the conclusion I came to too, is that I'm not a queer person. I don't have that actual understanding of what it's like to be in that person's shoes. But I do consider myself an ally, and I do think it's really important that allies do stand up and speak, not for, but with this community. But one thing I can do is provide the perspective from a woman. If this bill is all about protecting women, I'll ask you, Eve, do you feel like this protects you anymore?
No, and as I said to you before, I've never once walked into a changing group or a bathroom and be concerned that, you know, there's a man in there. And I just don't think that these arguments and this bill is necessary. And as you said, defined a fish, it wouldn't change anything. And I actually think the best answer I heard on this a long time ago, not long time, but in the last election, 2023, was in the youth debate. They were discussing transgender bathrooms and how we would deal with that in schools. And Erica Stanford had a brilliant response. She said, look, I think at the end of the day, the teachers know how to deal with that. I don't think we need to make any particular policies on this. If there are kids who are in that position, the teachers there's often a disabled bathroom that's unisex. You know, some schools have unisex bathrooms anyway. And I think that schools just deal with it. And I think that sums it up, as you said. I think it's just something that gets dealt with in the background and doesn't need to be, you know, have a whole lot of attention brought on it to score political points.
Yeah. My last thing on this is that I want to be very clear that the Attorney General, Chris Bishop, has found that this bill is inconsistent with the Bill of Rights Act. He does speak a little bit to the freedom of discrimination based on sex and gender. But one thing that I think should be quite scary for women is the fact that there is an unjustifiable limit on the freedom of discrimination on the ground of age. The bill will define a woman as an adult woman, as somebody over the age of 20. And there are a lot of unintended consequences that could come from that. For example, women under the age of 20 may not be able to apply to the court for a declaration of paternity. Women under the age of 20 may not be able to access the defence of infanticide. A partner or spouse of a woman under the age of 20 may be unable to take parental leave because that requires a certificate certifying that a woman is pregnant. And there are a couple of others. And so there's some really access to abortion is another one for women under the age of 20. So yeah, there are way more issues than there are good with this bill. And lastly, I just would encourage anybody, I know I've said lastly a couple of times, lastly I would encourage anybody who feels strongly about this to make a submission before July 2 on this bill. You don't need to be an expert, you just need to speak to what you believe.
And if you don't know how to make a submission, if you Google New Zealand Parliament, or you can Google definition of a woman bill submission, it should come up online. And as I said, submissions don't need to be like a university essay paper. They can literally just be a few sentences. And if you feel extra strongly about it, you can apply to be heard before the select committee who'll be dealing with this and share your views. And I think it's really important to make submissions on things even as a lay person because the government are making decisions for all of us. And, we don't just want it to be people that are experts that make the decisions for our communities. Whether you have personal experiences or whether you just feel strongly about this bill, I think make a submission as there only needs to be a few sentences and really encourage you to do it.
Long.
No, not at all. Even if it's just as simple as I really am opposed to this bill, I think it's unnecessary. It's still more messages that the government are getting that the bill's not needed.
I'm actually going to be giving an oral presentation this week for the Disability Support Services Bill.
That's awesome.
Little 5-minute slot, I think, on Thursday. So I need to prepare something for that.
Which select committee is that for?
Oh, God.
Will it be the health or social development?
Social development.
Yeah, that would be right. That's cool. That's exciting. Well, Alex will have to report back to us next time how that goes.
Yeah, well, I've never done an oral submission before, so that should be good. And just quickly, like you said, you don't have to give the expert opinion and all that sort of stuff. That's the approach I think I'm going to take. Like, I could put my political and legal brain onto it, but I'm sure there are plenty of other amazing people who have already done that. I want to speak to it from my experience as a sibling of a disabled person.
That's fantastic.
So something to look forward to this week. Also, crazy stat from our guy Henry Cook at the Post, who heard from one of the clerks of the House that apparently there have been, over the last 30 years, half of the submissions to Parliament have been in this term of government.
Well, actually I did see that as well, which I think is fascinating. I think the Treaty Principles Bill will have been a massive reason of that. I guess there's two views on that. One, what are the government up to? There have been some unpopular things. But also, two, it's great to see people engaging in democracy. We're going to take a positive lens on that, right?
I agree.
Great to see people feeling like they can have a say on what's going on and what it's going to affect them. So 100% get behind that.
Yeah, cool stat. Okie dokie, shall we switch tack?
Yeah, let's go.
Scrutiny Week. Have you paid much attention this week to Scrutiny Week?
No, not really.
Well, you said you've been busy.
Yeah, I have been busy. And I guess for our listeners who don't know what Scrutiny Week is, it's basically a week where the MPs from all across the House have an opportunity to scrutinise ministers and their ministries for decisions that have been made. So it's essentially done in select committee, in the select committee rooms in the House. So the Parliament itself isn't sitting, but all the MPs and ministers are required to be there. And the idea basically is to give the opposition MPs a chance to really get into some of the weeds and the detail around things that the government are doing and decisions that have come out. And I believe it was an initiative that was started this term by this government.
Yeah.
And I, on the whole, think it's a good idea, although there hasn't really been a lot that seems to come out of it. I do wonder if it's the best forum for it, because I suspect what you get is kind of just another, similar to what you get in the House, where the government MPs all just, as is their job and as is the reality, just support what the government are doing, and then the opposition MPs kind of repeat what they say in the House. So I think the initiative's a good idea. I wonder if it needs sort of some work on how to go about it.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that. But very quickly, there are 2 scrutiny weeks in a year, but not this year because it's an election year. So they have one mid-year, this week, June, and then one in December. The June one's very like post-budget, doing the sort of estimates and like looking at the budget and scrutinising those expenses. Whereas the second one in November, December is more like the annual reviews, I guess. But we won't have that this year because we'll be in full election mode. Look, I think Scrutiny Week's a great thing to sort of build trust and confidence in our institutions. We've spoken a lot about that in the past, and this is one of those great ways in which it is done. But I don't know necessarily how effective it is when you've got hundreds of hearings in these select committees over the course of 1 week. There's a lot to sort of unpack. Does it need to be a longer set of time, perhaps? I'm not entirely sure. And I don't know really what, I guess I didn't watch any of the hearings, but from some of the news stories, there's some interesting bits, but not a lot else.
Yeah, and I question the effectiveness or the accessibility of it as well, right? Like, as you said, like, it's not something that regular people will, be able to necessarily get engaged with. I don't actually know what a better alternative would be. I actually wondered, to be honest, if those 2 weeks of Scrutiny Week is almost better if MPs are actually spent out in their electorates in the country talking to people more, because it's just another 2 weeks that they're not in their electorate and engaging with people. And I think and I think there's also results in people continuing to play politics, where I think when MPs are actually out talking to their constituents and to voters, it kind of gives them a bit of a reality check of what's going on. So, I like the idea of the initiative, but I wonder if it's just something that, isn't necessarily going to work.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely see a time and a place for it. I think it's really great. Obviously, as somebody who aligns myself with the opposition parties, this is really the time for opposition parties to get stuck in. So it's great to see, I guess, from my perspective. But I just think there's a lot of politicking that goes on, a lot of like toing and froing and kind of like digs and jabs and stuff, which is just like the antithesis, I feel like, of what it's supposed to achieve.
Yeah, I agree. Now, since not much came out of Scrutiny Week, something I did want to talk about this week was the Labour Party. And I will make an apology in advance to, I guess you could call him our producer, Sam, who is an avid Labour Party supporter. He's even a Labour Party candidate. I am just so disappointed with Labour.
Oh my God!
I just think, that we've been waiting all this time for these policies, and we've had the free public transport was their first policy that came out, and it was unfunded. And so they said that it was going to be funded by the Land Transport Fund, which is fine, but they didn't say what they were going to cut in response for that. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's the first problem I have with it. And then the other problem is that the maths don't really seem to add up. They say it's only going to cost $65 million, and which just does not at all work. And so I just feel like the idea of capping public transport for people in Auckland at $20 a week, I think it is, and then $10 in Wellington and Christchurch. Fantastic.
Or $20 in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch,
and then $10 around the country.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's public transport elsewhere. Maybe Dunedin.
Not out.
I just think I like the idea of the policy, but I think Labour have, as we've probably heard speak to before, already have an issue with being credible on the economy, and so announcing a policy where the math doesn't seem to add up, and also where there's not even a clear way they're going to fund it. It's just. I don't know if lazy is the word, but it's like, come on, do better. And they've also announced this policy around maternity...
Photo scans?
Yeah. So free scans of when you're pregnant. Fantastic idea. But then again, when they were asked how they're going to pay for it, it's going to be paid for out of the capital gains tax. And they were said, okay, well, what happens if the capital gains tax doesn't raise enough money? Oh, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So again, it's just announcing a couple of policies that I think on their face are, really positive policies that aren't properly thought out. And I just think that Labour need to be better than that.
See, that's really funny. Now, look, I'm not an economist. I'm not confident with math. So and I'm not going to jump in and defend Labour on how they've managed to add up the numbers on their policy. That's for them to do. But I find it's interesting. Obviously, Labour does have this sort of stereotype around it that they're not good with the economy. I would kind of say, well, National hasn't done very well with the economy this year round, and we speak so much about election promises and things, and I compare it to what National tried to do 3 years ago and say, hey, we're going to give you some income tax relief, which they had to spend money and get money from other different things like the clean car discount and the emergency response fund and stuff. And I got, I think, $40 a fortnight from that. Somebody like my dad, who is a pensioner, full-time family carer, and also works a minimum wage job, got less than the amount of coffee, like a cup of coffee sort of thing, with that income tax relief. So to me, I think this whole sort of thing about where the money is at and where and how the policies are going to work is what I think a really good argument for why we might need a parliamentary budget office.
Yeah, and I actually think that's a really good point. And I do acknowledge, I think that both sides do this game of these policies that aren't quite properly funded. But I think Labour, rightly or wrongly, have to be extra vigilant because it's just, they already are more mistrusted on the economy. And I also think, what I also find frustrating about this is because I'd actually like to see a decent debate between our two major political parties on some of the core issues that are affecting us. But all this does, by Labour announcing these policies that aren't properly done, is National can just, continue to run there. Oh, Labour are just going to tax you more, spend more, and everything's going to cost more. And so it's just like, get the same sort of political narrative that's been going on forever. And so I think that's also why I'm annoyed about Labour's sort of lack of dealing with these policies. Like, I think, especially also they've made us wait so long for them. But I do think from a strategy perspective, you can see Labour's going to be focusing on health, they're going to be focusing on cost of living, and it's going to be stuff that sort of is understandable and relatable to everyday people. The thing that I do think is interesting, though, is that these policies are universal. So universal means everyone gets it, no matter whether you earn $1 million a year or earn $10,000 a year. And I have a bit of an issue with that because I just think that, and I guess this is where the left versus right differ, is normally the left are more pro-universal, the right are more pro-targeted. And I just think that we're a country not a lot of money. I don't necessarily think that it's feasible to be paying, people that can afford public transport, people that can afford ultrasounds when they're pregnant. Why is the government paying for that? Why as taxpayers are we paying for that?
I think the issue is that how you make these sorts of policies targeted is really difficult.
I will acknowledge that. And there's always going to be people on the margins that miss out.
Absolutely. And so I kind of feel like the sort of argument of saying, well, if we're just going to help the really well-off, wealthier people get it, then we just shouldn't do it at all. And I know that's maybe not quite what you're saying. Yeah. But I find that so unconstructive. Like, I feel like there are plenty of people, a huge amount of people, myself included. This is a great policy for me and where I am sort of budget-wise, that would benefit from these sorts of policies. Maybe not the maternity scan photos.
Yes, I don't feel like you're announcing something on the podcast.
Not quite that one. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's a step in the right direction. But can I also just say, with the free public transport one, I think it's a great policy for the fact that it addresses cost of living concerns. I'd be $60 a fortnight better off, and it might incentivize me more to go out and spend my money in small businesses. And it's going to be great for the environment and something that's really going to shift the mentality of New Zealanders to get out of the car where they're idling down State Highway 1 for an hour, releasing CO2 into the atmosphere. We don't need to, we're in a fuel crisis. Like this is the time where we need to start changing our mentality about cars and public transport. And I feel like if the demand is there for public transport, the supply could be there too.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. But I think I would say, if this policy is going to cost way more than they say it is, which is likely is going to, and also there's going to be a massive uptake, theoretically, in public transport use, then who's paying for that? Is that just going to, kind of go back in this vicious debt cycle that New Zealand's got going? So is it going to end up making us a bigger picture, longer term, worse off anyway because the government has to borrow more to pay for this? I just think that, these policies, surface level, great idea, and I, completely acknowledge there's lots of good things to it. But I want to see sort of more about how it actually works. And but I will also acknowledge that, for a lot of voters, they'll see the headline policy and be like, boom, that's easy. And I suspect that's what a lot of Labour's research and policy focus groups are telling them is, voters will just see the headline, and people don't often engage, more deeply with policy, which is something I really encourage our listeners to try and do if you have the time. And hopefully we kind of do a little bit of that for you on this podcast. And actually consider, what are the broader effects of this policy? Is it actually going to work? So I guess I'd be very interested to see, what it ends up costing if Labour win the election.
Yeah, I don't know. As I said, I'm not an economist, but I do kind of come back to this sort of swirling conversation about a parliamentary budget office, which is essentially a costings unit that's separate from Treasury or from Parliament, to actually look at these election promises and scrutinise them and to see whether they are doable, workable, whether they stack up. And it does sound like there has been some chats in Parliament about perhaps setting something like that up with Barbara Edmonds, Nicola Willis and Chloe Swarbrick. Not sure about any other parties, that's just what I've seen. And it does look like there might be some consensus that it should be a thing. I think they just all disagree on how to get there. So I think that's a promising start. Maybe we might get a little bit more transparency when it comes to these parties making election promises, so that we can actually see whether it's going to work. Because I can't say to you confidently that, it's a left-wing thing, it's going to be all good. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, and I guess the reason why parties that are in government will struggle a bit more with their costings policies is because they don't have the machinery of government behind them. So that's always been what we call incumbent advantage. The party that's in government can produce policies that are sort of better thought out and better costed, because they're not sort of beholden to their, maybe 10 staff research unit in Parliament that have to try and put all these things together. So yeah, I do think that there is definitely room in the conversation for a parliamentary budget office.
Food for thought.
So to finish us off for the episode,
we've got social media moment of the week. I'm back again this week with my choice. And actually my dad sent me this video and I was like, you know what, this is really good. I'm going to use it. It's a Facebook video from an Australian politician and former rugby player, indeed Wallaby captain, David Pocock. Have you seen him in his sort of political career beyond rugby?
No, I actually haven't been following him that closely.
Dude, you should. He's awesome. I think he's now an independent senator for the Australian Capital Territory, ACT. And I think he's so cool. He's so onto it. He's very sort of socially progressive and keen on the environment. He's got a master's degree in sustainable agriculture.
That's so niche.
I feel like that's a bit of you.
Yeah, that is.
But he posted this video and I think it is just so poignant, not only in an Australian context, but in a New Zealand context too. The video is nearly 2 minutes long. Perhaps we'll chuck it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But there's just a couple of bits that I just want to read out really quickly, because I feel like our politicians and our wider public would really benefit from hearing a message like this. Okay. In Australia, everyone has the right to free speech, but that doesn't mean we have to stay silent when our speech fuels fear and division. There are so many Australians who feel like politics isn't delivering for them. Too many Australians are working harder than ever and falling further behind. We're seeing rising levels of inequality, 1 million children growing up in poverty, housing out of reach for too many, and so many families struggling to make ends meet. If we're going to change any of that, we need to direct our anger at the systems, the policies, the parties, the vested interests who have let us down, not our fellow Australians. We have far more in common than what divides us, and pitting Australians together against each other is a distraction from the main game. Now he goes on, there's other fabulous bits and pieces in that video. I would encourage you to watch it. Only 2 minutes, but yeah. Any thoughts on that, Eve?
I think that's fantastic, and I actually think that probably circling back to as we talked about in the Man vs. Woman bill,
Yep.
I think that is the perfect description of what's going on with this bill at the moment. So
100%.
I think people should go and watch that, and I think, as you said, direct your anger at policies, at parties, at people that have kept the system going that's not working for you, other than directing it at each other.
Why can't our former All Blacks be politicians?
Well, Tane Randall, former All Black captain, is running for New Zealand First. Yeah, I know. New Zealand First and Tuki Tuk. It'll be interesting to see when list ranking, which is, I guess, when parties rank their candidates and MPs from 1 to however many they've got. Be interesting to see how high he ranks on that.
It will be indeed.
But I don't think he's going to be giving any of that sort of wisdom if he's standing for New Zealand First.
No, I think the Australians win on this one.
Yeah, I think they do.
But they can't win a Bleeders Low, so we're all good.
On that note, thank you so much for listening and watching this week.
And we'll catch you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Ka kite.